She stood before the glass as if answering a summons. The mirror held the room's cold light and returned it in a thinner voice. For the world, she was Frances Farme, sharp-jawed, quick-tongued, the kind of face that read well beneath studio lamps. Newspapers printed her lines with admiration and small alarm. Audiences gave her applause. The cameras took what they wanted and left the rest to shadow. In the glass, something lagged. Her reflection closed a smile a moment after she did. Her eyes arrived late. Once she had seen herself plainly. Later she would touch a cheek and find only the echo of touch. This delay was not a trick of lenses. It felt like time itself hesitating at the edge of her skin. They cataloged her as brilliant, defiant, dangerous to themselves. They labeled her with words that fit into police files and hospital ledgers: uncooperative, delusional, hysterical. The official pages used clinical grammar to fold a person into a record. Outside those pages, the City of Lights continued its commerce of faces and favors. Inside them, the language of care shifted, slow as fog, until care and containment could not be told apart. Tonight the mirror remembered her differently from the headlines. It reflected a sequence of short, bright scenes: a girl reading by the window, a woman on a stage, a face under a harsh dressing room lamp, then a long span of white, fluorescent, relentless, where the glass returned nothing but sheen. The question the mirror kept asking, in a tone too thin to be comforting, was not whether she had lost her mind. It asked whether the world had simply stopped returning her. In Seattle, the rain never fully stopped. It hung in the air, quiet, silver, reflective. Frances loved that kind of silence. She was a strange child, people said, too curious, too questioning, too unwilling to smile just because someone told her to. While other girls practiced charm, Frances practiced truth. Her mother kept a mirror in the parlor, the only bright thing in a house filled with gray. Frances would stand before it for hours, not to admire herself, but to test the reflection. She once told her sister, "If I look long enough, maybe I'll see who I'll become, or who they want me to be." At school, she was brilliant, won essay contests, debated teachers about God, and refused to recite the Pledge of Allegiance when she felt it was hollow. Her essay, "God Dies," caused a storm of outrage in the local paper. She was 16. The town called her rebellious, disrespectful, lost. But she only smiled and said, "If people are afraid of a question, it means the question is real." In those years, Frances discovered that truth was heavier than beauty, and that a woman who tried to hold it would always be punished. Her father left, her mother clung to religion and respectability. Frances learned early that being different meant being dangerous. The mirror became her witness. It reflected a girl growing sharper, lonelier, unafraid. Sometimes, at night, she'd wipe the mist off the glass and whisper, "You'll understand me, won't you?" And for a moment, the mirror shimmered, as if promising that it would. But mirrors lie kindly before they betray completely, and when Frances left for Hollywood, she didn't need to, because Hollywood was made of mirrors.
Hollywood greeted her not with applause, but with fluorescence, a light that never warmed, a light that stripped everything but the surface. Frances arrived in 1936, the girl from Seattle with a voice that didn't tremble and eyes that seemed to know too much. The studios adored her face but feared her mind. She refused the smile they rehearsed for her, spoke without permission, and questioned the words written for her. Directors whispered, "She's brilliant, but she's trouble." On set, she learned that cameras were hungrier than mirrors. They devoured not just the reflection but the soul behind it. Each take left a shadow in her expression, a delay like the mirror back home, except this time it was millions watching that lag between who she was and what they saw. When Come and Get It premiered, the critics called her untamed, raw, magnetic. But Frances only said quietly, "They're not describing me. They're describing the illusion they built from my bones." Behind her dressing room door, she'd stare into the studio mirror, powdered and perfect, and whisper, "Smile, Frances. The reflection is counting on you." Each film became a ritual of erasure, each spotlight a tiny interrogation. By the early 1940s, her resistance had a reputation. She refused to attend parties where contracts were signed under champagne light. She argued with producers, stormed out of sets, tore studio memos in half. They called her unstable, then difficult, finally unmanageable. There is a moment in a newsreel, grainy, flickering, where she steps out of a courtroom, reporters shouting, cameras flashing. For a second she stops, looks straight into the lens. Her eyes do not plead, they accuse. The film cuts there. It always cuts there, because what followed, the breakdown, the hospital, the silence, belonged to no one's script. And from that point on, no mirror in Hollywood ever showed Frances Farmer again, only the version they chose to remember.
They said she was violent. They said she screamed. They said she needed help. But no one ever recorded what she said before the screaming started. In 1943, Frances Farmer was taken by police from a hotel room, disheveled, furious, drunk, they claimed. The newsreel showed her face as if it were a spectacle of madness. The studio released a statement of deep concern. Then they erased her name from every upcoming film. The court called it protective custody. Her mother called it for her own good. The hospital called it treatment. But Frances, when asked what it felt like, whispered, like being buried alive, with the lights still on. The Western State Hospital in Stylecombe was quiet from the outside. White walls, green fields, windows that never opened. Inside, restraints, needles, electricity, silence. They strapped her to the table, white gowns moving like ghosts around her. The machine hummed, metal cold against skin. A flash, a sound like thunder swallowed in cotton. Then darkness. When she woke, the mirror in her room had been covered with cloth. Too fragile for patience, the nurse said. But Frances knew why. Because mirrors remember. For years, she drifted between rooms and reports, shock after shock, medication after medication. Her handwriting on file grew smaller, thinner, until it looked like someone else's. The newspaper stopped mentioning her. Hollywood had already rewritten her ending, a tragic star who lost her mind. But a janitor later recalled a strange thing. Sometimes, at night, Frances would sneak into the corridor and peel back the cloth from the mirror on the wall. She would stand there for minutes, unmoving, whispering something too soft to hear. One nurse said she was trying to talk to herself. Another said, no, she was waiting for the reflection to answer. Years later, when the hospital released her, she signed her name tremblingly, Frances Farmer, and under it, in shaky letters, a note, discharged, but not returned.
Years passed, and the files gathered dust. Each page held a diagnosis, a dosage, a doctor's note, all written in the same indifferent hand. Yet something was missing. Between the lines, a voice still lingered, faint as breath on cold glass. In 1950, a nurse broke her silence. She claimed Frances was never violent. She claimed Frances was lucid, calm, articulate, only furious when the treatments began. But the nurse's letter was never printed. The hospital denied her testimony. Hollywood ignored it. There was another report, unverified. A studio executive visited the hospital weeks before Frances's first electroshock. No record of that visit exists. Only a receipt for studio transportation, found years later in an archive box labeled miscellaneous. Some say he went to negotiate her release. Others whisper he went to make sure she stayed. Her case file ends abruptly in 1947, a signature confirming her final discharge, but the handwriting isn't hers. Archivists who examined it decades later said the letters looked traced, copied from an earlier note. In the same file, a photograph was found,
Frances standing by a window, her face half lit, half erased by glare. If you look closely, you can see something strange. Her reflection in the glass doesn't match her posture. Her head tilts a fraction the other way, eyes open wider, as if trying to warn her. Some say the image is damaged film. Others call it a coincidence. But one archivist, in a taped interview years later, said quietly, "It wasn't the photo that was damaged. It was the woman inside it." And then there's the final whisper, an anonymous note left inside a studio ledger. When they wanted her gone, the mirror kept her. It was the only contract she never signed. No one knows who wrote it. No one knows when. But every record of Frances ends the same way, with silence that sounds too deliberate to be forgotten.
They said she recovered. They said she lived quietly afterward, a waitress, a recluse, a ghost still capable of breathing. But recovery, in Hollywood, often means the world simply stopped looking. In her later years, Frances avoided mirrors. She covered them with scarves, turned them to the wall. "They lie," she once told a friend. "They always have." When she spoke, her voice was softer, slower, like someone remembering a language she no longer trusted. There's a photograph taken near the end, Frances sitting by a window, winter light on her hair. The glass reflects nothing, no camera, no world beyond, only white. Some say it's overexposure. Others say the mirror had finally gone blind. Her name rarely appeared in print again. Hollywood forgot its difficult woman. But in the quiet of old film reels, sometimes her face flickers for a moment, too sharp, too real, before vanishing into static. The reflection returns if only to remind us what it cost to be seen. They said she lost her mind, but maybe she just lost her reflection. And in Hollywood, that's the same thing. Then silence. A slow fade to white. The faint sound of a breath, cut short, and the soft hum of electricity. The screen remains blank for a few seconds longer than it should, and somewhere behind it, a whisper, low, almost tender, repeats what she once said to the mirror long ago. "You'll understand me, won't you?" No answer. Only the sound of the projector winding down and the echo of a life that refused to vanish quietly.